Hey now guys, it's Knockout21. How are y'all doing today? In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Sega Genesis Mini. This little box really brings back a lot of memories. I remember being 6 years old and watching a promotional video that we received in the mail and accompanied my brother to a swamp meet so he could pick up his. Yes, this is going way back. This was before EB Games or GameStop. Retail didn't really have a lot of these things, like Walmart or Targets didn't really carry a lot of video games. They carried some video games, but there were just some things they wouldn't have. So my brother actually had to go to a swamp meet, go to like one of their vendors that deals with video games, so he could put in a pre-order to get one. So yeah, I vaguely remember that. But when he brought it home and I played Alter Beast for the first time, I knew that something new just arrived. To me, it was like the beginning of a new era of video gaming, and I was really amped up for it. Fast forward a couple of years, and I have a pretty big Genesis collection. Well, a decent sized Genesis collection. I'm not trying to collect every single game, but mostly the ones I remember and want. And yeah, and then having this thing, all those games in a little box is a neat idea. So yeah, this video is mostly going to be talking about like my nostalgia of the Genesis, mostly because does have a lot of the games I remember growing up with, as well as a review of it, whether or not it's good for you if you want to like get it for yourself or whatnot. So yeah, onward to the video. Before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and state that I'm not going to look at every single game on this console. If I did that, I'll be here forever. But I will show you like a couple of the games. As you can see, this is a menu. You could like adjust it any way you want. You could have the games come out in chronological order, its genre, have it alphabetized. You can organize it any number of ways. Pretty neat. But one neat thing about it is the fact that you could actually change the language and have it and play like alternate versions of these titles. So by changing the language, you get the different menu with the Japanese covers of these games. Here I am going to play Puyo Puyo, a game we never received over here until much later, like on a virtual console. But yeah, you get to play Puyo Puyo. It's a pretty fun puzzle game. Not too hard. It's very easy to get into. However, if you change it back to English, we get, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. We're all familiar with this. It's basically the same game as Puyo Puyo, except they use the Adventure of Sonic the Hedgehog, robot characters. And here we have another version of a game, Contra Hard Corps, the Japanese version. This particular version had a life bar for the characters. Made the game particularly easy. I don't know why they took it away from the American version. But yeah. However, there's another version of Contra on here called Probotector. Now, Probotector is available if you change the language over to German. Basically makes all humans the robots. It's it's very interesting playing Contra in this way. I believe there was some sort of law or some sort of rules saying they cannot depict humans getting shot at. So they basically turned all the characters into robots. It's an interesting version of Contra, but it's still fun regardless. I could go ahead and look at all the little differences between the regions and versions, but no, we will be here all day if I did that. Let's begin with the games that I first started playing. This is Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle. This was my very first Sega Genesis game that I've ever bought. It felt like it was just yesterday that my dad took me to KB Toys to pick out a game, and I remember seeing Alex Kidd and Enchanted Castle like up there on the shelf, and I was like really happy about it because I remember Alex Kidd on the Master System and having a great time with that. Um, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and get Alex Kidd and Enchanted Castle. And this game was very difficult. It's a very hard game. You know, as you can see, Alex slips a lot, and his hit. Oh, I just died right there. I just died right there. His hitbox, the collision and stuff on this it's a little wacky. It takes some time to get used to, but yeah, hitting enemies and collecting coins and whatnot, it made this game kind of tough. I really don't think I was able to beat it until much later. I think like not until I was 10. I remember I was like 10 the first time I was able to beat this game. And this was like a total like 4 years after I actually got it. I remember I stopped playing it and my dad being mad at me. Oh, why did you stop playing? I was like, I just can't beat it. I just can't beat it. And I wouldn't get another game to like too much later. But yeah, Alex Kidd and Enchanted Castle was difficult. However, there's a lot of things I liked about it, especially like the vehicles. Of course, you have a bike, and as you can see here, I have a helicopter that makes passing certain levels a little easier. And there you go, I just lost it. I'm gonna go ahead and reset it so I could try again. That was one thing I didn't like about this game, is the fact that you could lose your vehicles quite easily, and then you would have to play rock paper scissors to have a chance to get it. And depending on how it went, it probably didn't like work out, but it was still fun regardless. um but Sega, I guess they couldn't really continue this game going. Like I said before, this game was difficult, and it was one of those games that it was like a required kind of taste. It was fun in its own way. However, there were a lot of things going against it that made this game just like a little too difficult. It just kind of flew under the radar. Only like true old school Sega fans would know about it. But still, it's a fun game regardless. It just requires a lot of practice and a lot of trial and error. Okay, and the next game we're going to look at here is Ghouls and Ghosts. This game was actually developed by Sega. So you're going to see right now, Capcom game 1988, reprogrammed game Sega 1989. So Sega actually developed this title using a Capcom license. Sega actually had to do this a lot since Nintendo had a good tight stranglehold of all the third-party developers and publishers and whatnot. So this was one of the ways Sega was able to get certain games on their console. And I remember my brother getting this game along with the Genesis, and there were times where he was really frustrated in certain sections. So yeah, it's one of those games that has a bit of a challenge. I remember beating this game myself around the same time, as Alex Kidd. Like, I guess my gaming abilities like got came to fruition around when I was 10. So I was able to beat this game, after learning the patterns and stuff and learning enemy placements. I was finally able to beat this game. And yeah, this game does have a bit of a challenge. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but was the kind of thing that was common back in the day. Games with a challenge. You can actually play this game. Besides this Genesis version, there was a like a version of it on the Capcom Classics Collection Volume 1, if I'm not mistaken. It's not that difficult to find, but I'm glad they included the Genesis version. This is the one I remember, the one I took a long time to like figure out where things are. Uh, I would say it took me a good maybe week to figure out where things are at. Oh yeah, this is the thing I used to do when I was a kid. This is the third stage, by the way, and yeah, I got the night to change color. It's some quirk in how the Genesis reads the color palette. When you get to a new section, the color palette changes and whatnot. And yeah, I got the night to change color, and I thought it was pretty neat. I remember showing my brother, and he thought it was pretty neat too. I died. Anyway, let's go to the next game. And from one Capcom licensed game to another, here we have Strider, the Japanese version in particular. Now, I have to tell you guys, the import version was actually the first time I played this game. It was, and it still is, a very awesome title, and it actually opened me to the world of imports. I never knew that Japan, there was this whole other thing going on, and there's this whole world of people importing games from overseas and playing them on their home consoles. Now, I have to point out that this game I don't think was ever part of anyone's collection. I think it might have been a rental. There was these mom and pop video game stores that specialize in imports, and this was one of them. We actually got to play this. I think a good like a year to 6 months before the American release, and yeah, you would actually experience games before they ever got here in this manner. And Strider is a good game. It is very challenging. I'm not gonna lie. It falls in line with a lot of other Sega games where it's all about the challenge. It is very difficult. It does take time to get used to, recognize patterns, know where items are at, so you could better use them. And it is one of those games that requires a lot of trial and error. I used to actually be good at this game. I remember being able to beat this in a breeze, and now I have difficulty trying to remember where things are at. I vaguely remember where certain things are at, but most times I just I'm stumbling around and whatnot. Here you can see me forgetting that those stupid mushrooms are poisonous and take your life. But this jungle stage is my most favorite stage, by the way. The music, the boss fight, it is probably my most favorite stage out of the entire game. Regardless, this is an awesome game. I do recommend trying this game out once you get your Sega Genesis Mini. And yeah, let's go on to the next title. Now this is Thunder Force 3 from Technosoft. Technosoft was one of the few third-party developers who was willing to work with Sega, bringing out some of their, MSX games onto the Genesis and making a really, really good job with them. Thunder Force 3 is one of their better games of the time. It's basically a side-scrolling shooter. You get a nice variety of weapons. My favorite one's a hunter because it's just bullets to target the nearest enemy and makes things a little bit easier. When it comes to me and shooters, yeah, it does take a while for me to recognize a pattern. I'm doing a very terrible job here. Oh my god, I don't know why I recorded this, but yeah, it is a fun game regardless. Personally, I would have preferred Thunder Force 4. The main reason why is because the Thunder Force 4 really pushes the Genesis to its limits. It has multiple parallax scrolling going on. And the Thunder Force 3 in comparison looks a little bit basic, but it's still a good game. It is one of the better Thunder Forces out there, and it's a worthy entry to the collection here. Well, but I'm just saying, to me personally, I would have picked Thunder Force 4. My guess is the reason they didn't put 4 in this is because they have it on the Switch in the eShop, and that might have hindered sales or something. I'm not too sure about it, but still, this is a good entry of the series. they could have also included Herzog's Zwei, but that's just kind of nitpicking at this point. Anyway, oh yeah, I also don't remember playing this game too much. I just 2 and 4. Those are the only 2 games I remember playing. But I'll stop now. Onward to the next video. Now you cannot have a Sega Genesis collection without Sonic the Hedgehog. It is one of the games that really defines the Genesis, especially Sega of the early 90s. So you have that. And I remember playing this just a couple of days after it was released and being amazed at how like awesome the graphics look, how colorful everything was. It was one of those games that probably defined my youth. I became a big Sonic fan after playing this game. I was like way into Sonic. I was looking forward to the then announced television show that wasn't due out for another 2 years. But yeah, it Sonic the Hedgehog and this game in particular really stuck with me. I continually play it from time to time, either one of the various Sega Genesis collections or on my actual Sega Genesis, or sometimes I'll just play it like, you know, on a phone if I could find which phone still has it. But yeah, it is just one of those games I go back from time to time. Now, the main thing about this game and why it's so special to me is because Sega really didn't like. Sega was still struggling trying to make games for consoles. It was one of their, I guess, habits of making games really hard or really challenging. And it did put off a couple of people. I would say myself included. There were some games I wouldn't beat till much later, but I would say Sonic the Hedgehog was probably the first game I've ever beaten. And it's mostly because it was easy. It does have a bit of a challenge. However, if you mess up, you really have to like mess up big. My most favorite level of this entire game is Starlight Zone. Sometimes I'll use the level select sheet and just play this level from time to time. And the music and whatnot, it just really brings back a lot of memories. I'm glad they included this in here. You cannot have a Sega Genesis Mini without this. I cannot state that enough. Anyway, let's go on to the next game. If there were to be any Streets of Rage part of this collection, then I'm glad that it was Streets of Rage 2. It is easily the best out of the entire series, and you know, a lot of fans online would agree with me. I remember playing this game with friends, you know, consistently, you know, from the normal setting to the hardest setting to the maniac setting once we unlock things. And I would just spend hours and hours trying to figure out every nook and cranny of this game, finding every single hidden, you know, one up, learning the combos, how to extend combos, basically breaking down the mechanics and finding the most efficient way to beat the game. I actually considered speedrunning this game at one point, but there were just some things I wasn't able to do. Regardless, it is an awesome game. This is Yuzo Koshiro's music at its finest. I believe a vinyl record was released not that long ago with all the tracks included. A definitely awesome game. One thing I really find difficult with this version, and I think it has to do with the emulation, is it's trying to like do that, which you just saw right there, where Axel does a double kick at the end instead of the standard one. It was one of those things I mastered on the Genesis, but I think due to how the emulation works, the timing is just a little bit off and it doesn't come out all the time like I used to be able to pull off. Regardless, it is still a fun game. It's a 2-player game, and I'm glad that it's part of this collection. Okay guys, so there you have it, the Sega Genesis Mini. I have to stop right now, just mostly because well, I'll be here all day. There's like 42 different games in this thing, and I don't want to spend all day talking about each one. Not to mention, I didn't even play like a good chunk of those titles. Regardless, I just wanted to show you guys the games that really impact how I play games, and the ones that really like shape the way I think about games, and really had the ones that really stuck with me all these years. And I gotta say, this little device here is very awesome. It has like I said before, 42 games, even a couple of games that were never released here in the States, such as Mega Man, Probotector, Tetris, and Darius. Um, well, Mega Man was kind of released on the Sega channel, but not everyone had that, so yeah. But still, it's an awesome piece of machinery. I gotta give this thing like an A minus. Now, the reason I give it a minus is because the controls that it came with. It came with 3-button control pads, which I understand what they were going for. They were going for the more nostalgic kind of thing. A lot of people I knew that had the Genesis had the 3-button control pads and not the 6-button pads, which I would have preferred, especially for games like Street Fighter and Eternal Champions. You know, so yeah, I understand why. What I mainly use to play those games is this thing right here. It's like the Sega Saturn pad from Retrobit. It works beautifully for those games. The footage I'm showing you right now, like that combo I pulled off with Guile, and some of the combos I pulled off with Ken were used. Were used. Were made by this control pad, and it kind of sucks that you have to actually get a different accessory to fully utilize this console or those games specifically. But that's just a minor thing. That's why I still give it an A, not a full A plus or anything like that, but still an A. Anyway, this was Knockout 21. Please comment, rate, and subscribe, and like always, have a good one. Take care, you guys.